My last video was about psychology, mental health, and spirituality. Today we're talking about psychiatry and spirituality. So what's the difference? A lot of you know that psychology and psychiatry are different. Psychologists work with clients through psychotherapy and sometimes other approaches. Psychiatrists are medical doctors. We often prescribe medications, and we may also incorporate therapy and other modalities. I'm a psychiatrist. I do prescribe medication when I feel it's needed, and I also support people through therapy. I want to talk about psychiatry and spirituality because on my own journey, I suffered from depression, and I encountered spiritual teachers who said that taking medication was a way of avoiding being present with what is. Well, I took that to heart, and I stayed deeply depressed for years, even though I was fully showing up for what was arising in me. I was meditating 2 hours a day. I had profound spiritual insights and awakenings, but nothing touched the depression. And so eventually, at a point of real desperation, I listened to my psychiatrist and I agreed to take an antidepressant. And several weeks later, I was astounded because the depression lifted and I finally felt like myself again. I didn't feel high and I didn't feel numbed out and I didn't feel like I was avoiding anything. I just felt like me again. That heaviness and the hopelessness were gone. And life just wasn't such a struggle anymore. There was this sort of natural buoyancy, and I had access to all the human emotions, to joy, to fear, to sadness, to laughter. I was more spontaneous and I was more present. And actually, I was more available to my spiritual journey. And so what I came to understand is that the biological component of our mental health really matters. Our experiences and our habits of thought and our trauma, our genetics, our neurology, all of that affects the biology of our psychology. So if we're on a spiritual path and we ignore this biological aspect of our mental health, we're neglecting an important part of our human self. It's quite rare for someone to have a profound spiritual awakening and for their psychological challenges to just dissolve in that single awakening. It may happen, but if it does, it's very rare. So usually, awakening to the unity and the love that we are at our core, awakening to our non-dual nature is very profound, but our human tendencies typically remain. And the beauty is that every part of the human experience that does stick around can be used as a doorway home, including tending to our biology. So I'm not suggesting that everyone with psychological challenges should take psychiatric medications. That's something to explore with your doctor. What I am saying is that if you're on a spiritual path and you're struggling with mental health challenges, choosing to take psychiatric medication does not automatically mean you're bypassing or avoiding anything. For me, taking medication actually accelerated my spiritual journey. It helped sort of quiet the looping patterns in my nervous system that I hadn't been able to undo through other modalities, in spite of all of my efforts. And the medication allowed me to be more present. And so I'm also not suggesting that psychiatric medication is the only way to support your biology. diet and supplements and yoga, exercise, energy work, and a lot of other modalities can be very supportive. But there is a place for medication. Just like if you had diabetes or high blood pressure and you needed medication for that, you would take it. Sometimes psychiatric medication is also what's needed. So there's often this assumption by spiritual teachers and in spiritual circles that taking psychiatric medication keeps you from progressing spiritually. I'm here to tell you that that is simply not true. And it can be a really harmful teaching. If you're struggling with your mental health, it doesn't have to be an obstacle to your spiritual life. In fact, it might be the very doorway in. Thank you for joining me today. Next time, we'll talk about longing and the spiritual journey.